Isn't it always the way that just as you're about to go live is when your coughing fit decides that's totally the time to spout off? Hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight's YouTube stream. If you're a regular faithful viewer of the YouTube streams, then you'll know that this stream was actually supposed to happen last Monday and not this Monday. But alas, last week I was on vacation, so of course I got some sort of illness. You'll probably hear me coughing on and off throughout the thing here. It's not as bad as it was, and I apologize in advance for that. But I foolishly did a daytime stream on Twitch on Monday, and got myself into a coughing fit that sort of made my chest hurt a little bit. And I thought, you know, maybe we don't want to actually do a YouTube stream this evening. So I begged off and scheduled until tonight. But alive we shall be here on this faithful Halloween eventide, which is why I am wearing the necromancer's shirt, promoting necromancy in all of its forms, plus saving the planet by reusing initial resources. So, recycle those dead bodies. Put those dead people to your purpose. Assign them to your own evil tasks. And that's kind of what we're going to be doing here tonight. And because I am going to be working on a Sublime Text plugin settings listener, which is something in Sublime Text API plugin functionality that allows you to watch when preferences are changing so that you can take some action. Now, there's a variety of reasons why you might want to do something like that. Any sort of setting that exists, let's say, for example, spell check. You might want to know when spell check is being turned off and on. You could do that by watching the settings to see when the settings actually change. You could do something in response to the rulers changing. If you were calculating some sort of word wrap on the fly, you might want to know where to do the wrap. The wrap might be related to a ruler setting, and while you could try to create a plugin that causes the ruler to change, why not just watch for the ruler to change and then take specific action? In our case here, much as I have done in a previous package, override audit, as a matter of fact, which we're probably going to be referring to at some level this evening, because it's been a while since I've actually done this. The setting that we want to watch, pardon me, is the list of ignored packages. Those are the packages that are currently installed in Sublime, but nobody's actually, interested in using them, so Sublime has been told to unload them and pretend as if they don't exist. The package that we're working on right now is for enhancing snippets by allowing you or anybody else that creates a package to add their own custom variables to snippets, something which hasn't really been available in Sublime Text in the core, but changes in Sublime Text 4's API make it easier than ever to implement something like this and keep it as if it was built-in functionality as far as how it's exposed to the user. What we want to do as a part of that plugin is find all snippets in all packages that currently exist and are enabled to be able to see if there's something inside of them that we should enhance for our own evil, nefarious snippet purposes, which is something that we actually have in play right now. And ironically, side note, someone asked in the Discord earlier today, I think it was, how do you create a snippet in Sublime that inserts the current date and time without having to press another key? And the answer to that question is actually this package that I'm currently working on, although I haven't responded to that particular thing yet. But what happens if a new package is installed while Sublime is running and it has snippets inside of it that might need to be enhanced? Well, you need to know that the package was installed. Or what if you had a package that was already installed and it has enhanced snippets inside of it, but someone ignored it? Well, that package is ignored. Everything inside of it should be ignored. So we should notice that and stop enhancing the snippets that we've preloaded into memory from that package. Both of these things can easily be done by examining the ignored package setting in Sublime Text, and because it tells you what packages are ignored. So if you see a package enter the ignored list, then you know that package is ignored. But also, you can tell if packages are being installed using that functionality as well, because package control, when it installs packages, the first thing it does is add a package to the list of ignored packages so that it can install and put that package in place without having to worry that Sublime's going to partially load part of the content while it's still in the process of installing it. And only after everything is fully in place is it removed. So by watching a package go in, we can determine that that package is something we no longer care about, if it's something we happen to care about in the first place. And by noticing that something came out of the thing, we can by and large tell if the package was just installed. I mean, to be perfectly full in a disclosure on that, you would need to have a list of all packages that weren't installed before you started. But for our purposes here, all we need to know is when packages go in so that we know to unload their snippets, and when packages go out so that we know to scan for snippets. And that is going to do everything we need to do. And we're going to talk about that here today. I have implemented this previously for a similar reason in my override audit package, which needs to watch for packages being installed and ignored and unignored so that it can generate a warning to tell you that something has changed. It uses it to figure out if it should actually, notice rather that something has changed. I haven't really worked with it since then, so while I fully understand exactly how it works, the bit that we're probably going to need to refer to here is a little bit of how I set up that actual code. And so, allow me to press the button, which, if I do it properly, will take us into the coding screen where we can see what's actually happening. It would appear that I have pressed the button appropriately, but this particular copy of OBS is still having problems. So pardon me for one moment while I alter the properties of this to be screen 0. This is the first YouTube stream that I've done since something funky happened to my system, and I did fix that problem, but I fixed it in the copy of OBS that I use for Twitch, and I use a separate one for YouTube to make sure that I don't do anything silly, like forget that I made a fix. And while we're saying stuff here, if YouTube had a shout-out functionality like Twitch, I would point out that Jeremy Dale here in the chat is better known to you if you follow me on Twitch as Valley Dweller, and he streams here on YouTube, and he has videos here on YouTube, as well as Twitch. You should probably check that stuff out. Unfortunately, YouTube isn't quite there yet in that particular functionality. But in any case, here is stuff we're going to be working with today. Allow me to tell the phone that I'm not interested in this. And Valley Dweller is currently live. So he probably didn't even hear me say that. Or maybe he did. Maybe he's streaming on Twitch while listening to a YouTube stream. That would be funny. Allow me to go over here and click an appropriate button. I'm going to click this button right over here. That's what I'm going to do. Well, I guess I'm going to click this button here. Pardon me. Cough's getting a lot better. I will say that. Maybe he was lying about him being live. I'll just type stuff in manually, shall I? There we go. All right. Here's the skinny on how this actually works. All right. We're going to try to do this in a way that we could generate some sort of perhaps tutorial content or clip or something. When referring to settings in Sublime Text, these are the pardon me. Let's start that again. When dealing with settings and preferences in Sublime Text, these are stored on disk as Sublime-settings files. You're probably very familiar with the preferences.sublime settings, which is the overall application settings. There are also syntax-specific settings. There are settings that are specific to particular projects. And you can have view-specific settings as well, where a view represents a specific tab, which is why this file can have a couple of rulers and this one can have none. These are syntax-specific settings that allow me to do that. But if I were to come up to the View menu and change a ruler to 70, that applies to only this file and not to others. Regardless of where the settings are actually sourced from, they're all interfaced with from the Sublime perspective as a instance of the settings class. The settings class acts like a dictionary for all intents and purposes, based on settings that you get. You can get the value for a particular setting, optionally getting a default. If not, you get none. You can set the value of a setting. You can use this to set the default of something so that later on when you use get, if you don't specify a value, you automatically get that particular value. Note that some of the things in here that are listed as undocumented might actually be documented now because I haven't updated this in a little bit. But erase allows you to remove a setting. That never removes anything from the parent setting. So this is an example of how you can remove customizations at some level. Check to see if a setting is actually set or not. And these are the things that we care about right here: add on change and clear on change. These register callbacks that you can get notified when settings in a particular settings object change. Not all settings anywhere, only the settings in a particular file. So, or in a particular settings object, rather. There's a few different ways to get settings. First of all, if you have a view, then it has a settings object, as we can see here. And we could ask this to get the value of the rulers setting, and it'll tell us that there's exactly one ruler at position 70. Whereas over here in this file, there are two rulers, 79 and 80. An example of the erase, by the way, would be something like this: view.settings.erase rulers. Now the setting that I applied as a view specific setting is gone, so the syntax settings reapply. If I do that over here, this has no effect because there aren't any view specific settings. So this is an example of that. Now the other way that you end up getting settings, or a settings object rather, is by using sublime.load settings and specifying just the name of the settings file. For example, preferences.sublime settings, like so. And we can see that's going to generate us an object. Now you notice that although this is a package resource, we don't actually specify the name of a package in here at all. Pardon me for a second while I sneeze. Sorry about that. Sneezes always seem to come in pairs or triplets. When you load settings like this, you don't specify the name of a package. And that's because this settings file can exist in multiple locations. Okay, there's the third one. We should be good now. So for example, for the preferences.sublime settings, there's a version of this in the default package, which provides the default settings. There's also a version of this in your user package as well. So this actually takes care of finding all of the places where the settings are defined and loading them and combining them together into one single object in the appropriate hierarchy. Similarly, if other packages shipped a preferences.sublime settings, they would be included in there as well. Remember, if you watch the video that's available on the channel about settings and how they work, much like many package resources, the resource from the default package is loaded first. The resources from the user package are loaded last, and every other package inside is loaded essentially based on the lexical sort order of the package that it's inside of. That's to make sure that it's always a determinate order and it always works the same way every time. So by loading this, we get not only the default settings, but my settings that apply on top of that. So if I did something like that and did a, say, get rulers, we can see that the default rulers that I have set are on columns 80 and 110. But in Python files, I use 79 and 80. And over here in this sort of file, I use none. This is exactly how this whole operation is meant to work, right? Now, the items that we are interested in here are the add-on change and clear on change. Now this has values that say key and on change or key here. The most common problem that people have with settings listeners is thinking that you specify in here the name of the setting you want to watch. So you might assume that you say settings.addonChange rulers so that you can tell when the rulers setting is changing. But that's not actually what that's for. Using add-on change always tells you about all changes made to the settings, regardless of what setting it is. The key that you're specifying here is just an arbitrary string that represents your registration of a callback so that you can call clear and provide the exact same key. The second problem that people have when they use settings listeners is not calling clear on change, because when you call add on change, you're specifying a function that gets called every time any setting changes in that settings object. That will happen forever until you quit Sublime or you call clear on change. You might think that reloading the plugin will clear that out, but it actually doesn't. The listener remains as long as the plugin exists, which will cause your call to add on change when the plugin reloads to register a second listener. So you might notice that you get told about things 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times every time they happen. That's a consequence of not using clear on change here. All right. So again, if we want to summarize the two most important aspects of settings listeners, the key is a user created string that you specified that uniquely identifies your event handler. And if you ever call add on change, always call clear on change with the exact same key to remove the listener. The best place to do these sorts of things is in plugin loaded for this one and plugin unloaded for this one, because no matter what happens when a plugin gets unloaded, its plugin unloaded gets called, and that's not by accident, because we need this exact thing to actually happen in that particular case. So for our purposes here, I need to reach back here for a Kleenex because of the sneezes, so pardon me for that. We need to call these two things. Now, we want to know when packages are ignored, and we want to know when they're unignored. We could do this from directly inside the package, and that's ultimately what we're going to do. But for our purposes here, let's say that we close all of this stuff and work up a simple sample of this in a regular plugin, and then we'll be able to take that and apply it wherever we see fit. So we're going to need a new plugin for that. And we'll call this settings listener test, for example. Remember, the name of the file doesn't matter. It just needs to be something that allows you to know what it is. So don't be like me and have a bunch of files in your user package that you created because you're helping people that you didn't give decent names to, because it makes life really hard later on. We're not going to need the command, so let's get rid of that. But what we are going to need is a plugin loaded. And we're going to need a plugin unloaded, like so. Now, my plugin loaded and my plugin unloaded. Save the file. We'll see it says my plugin loaded. Let's clear that console. Save the file. It tells us that it unloaded the existing plugin and then loaded the existing plugin. So you can see this is telling you when these two events actually happen. Now, plugin unloaded will not get invoked. Hang on. Let's just do that because I was testing something or showing somebody something a little bit earlier and I forgot to turn that off. That's why that message arrived there. So again, boom, boom, boom. This plugin unloaded won't get invoked if Sublime quits, only when the plugin reloads. So that's an important takeaway to take from something like this. Make sure that Nothing that your plugin is doing needs to know when Sublime is quitting, because that's not necessarily going to work. There are events that you can use for that, but nothing is foolproof. So we want to be able to call again that boop, 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 add on change listener. To do that, we need a settings object. Now, for our personal usage, we know that we want to watch the ignored packages setting. The only place that you can set that is in the global preferences.sublime settings. So if we said sublime.load settings and told it to load preferences.sublime-settings, that would give us the name of a settings object. So we could do something like that, right? And if we wanted to, we could even do that. And we can see that loading in like so. Okay? Now, with that settings object, we could actually call the thing. So we could say settings.add-on-change. Remember, that goes key and listener. So we're going to need some callback that gets invoked whenever the settings change. So we might say something like settings changed. And then, well, let's say we actually pass the settings into this. And then we could say something like the settings have changed, like this. Okay? Now, for our purposes here, we would call this like test key, let's say. And here we want to have a lambda where we call settings changed and pass it the settings. So now we're saying when the plugin loads, that every time the preferences change, invoke the function settings changed and pass it the settings file object that we loaded. All right. I'm going to save that. And it's now in play. Now I have this preferences.sublime settings over here. If I save this file, we can see it say the settings have changed. And every time I save, we're going to see that. Even though no setting has physically changed, the file is changing, Sublime is reloading it, and hence it knows that the setting has changed. Now watch this. This doesn't call clear on change. So I clear the console. I click the key. And now when I click over here and save the settings, we get that callback happening twice, because the one that we called the first time through is happening, and we just reloaded the plugin, so we set it up again. And if I save this 3, 4, 5 times, when I save the settings, we get that message 5 times. And that's why we say the most important thing that you can do here is make sure that you call clear on change when you're done. Now here we can do something like this. Settings.clear on change. You have to specify the same key, so like test key. Now you might be saying to yourself, where do we get this settings information? Because the settings file object itself is local to this. So should that be some sort of global or something? And in fact, doesn't have to be in this particular case. And the reason for that is sublime.load settings is a cached result. And what we mean by that is that every time you call this for any particular settings file, it will always return the exact same settings object back to you every single time. So I guess that sneeze went away. That means that when we call this, even though it's a completely separate thing, because we called it once here, we're definitely going to get it called here as well. Or we're going to get the same object, I should say, so that we can call it here. Now, in order to test this, this is going to be interesting, because if I click save, now if I save this, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But if I say 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 different times, if I save here, Oh, look at that. We totally cleared them all the way by calling our function. Interesting. So now every time we save that, we really only get one. So cool. So that's the first part of what we want here. And again, remember, Sublime.load settings returns a cached value. So the very first time you call that, or the first time anybody calls this to load the preferences, that's when Sublime actually goes out and finds the file and all of the packages and loads them and starts watching those resources. It turns them into a settings object. It gives you the settings object. The next time you call it with the exact same preferences or the exact same file name, it just says, oh, I already loaded this one. Here's the object from before. So you'll frequently see things in plugins where someone is very carefully trying to cache this value or pass it around in arguments in a function or things like that. And while you can do that, and it might make the code clearer in some cases, it's not strictly required by any stretch of the imagination. You can, anytime you need a settings object, you can always just call that and you'll always get the one that you expected to get. So life is good in that regard. We might actually change this to something like enhanced snippet listener. Well, maybe we'll actually change that. Underscore enhanced snippet listen, like that, just to keep that along the thing there. And the reason for that is, as you saw here, there were multiple listeners registered with that one particular key, but one call to clear on change removed them all. So you want to be careful to choose a name that nobody else is going to pick. That way you don't run into a problem where someone removes your settings listener when you didn't intend to, because that would be uncool. Now, there's a couple other things that we're actually going to need here, and this might be the sort of case where we actually do this as a singleton. That's how I did this before, so I think we should probably do that here again. So we might say snippet settings listener is a class, and we're going to say instance is none, and then we're going to need an init that's going to do something. And here we're going to say if snippet settings listener dot instance is not none, return. That way we can only ever create one instance of this class, although I guess we probably need to say snippet settings listener dot instance is equal to self, so we actually store the thing. From in here we can grab stuff that we want. So let's actually do this. All right, we're going to do that to say that we want to actually store this settings object. And it's not required. You don't have to do that. But it's nice to, make things a little bit clearer later on without having to call load settings all the time, because we're going to be doing this in a couple of different places. Now, one of the things we're going to need to do here is grab the current list of ignored packages as a set. And then we want to add the listener for that as well. So, and we're going to give it that same name that we had before, but we can provide something like that. That's what this would say. So we don't have that in place anymore. And here we can say simplistically, we can set up the listener. So we don't need to do that. I guess we need some sort of instance method here, don't we? How did I do this previously? We'll do something like, oh, that's going to be a class method, isn't it? Oops. Oh, okay. Here's where we would say, I see how I did this previously. Okay. Then snippet settings listener dot oops. And we have to stick that value in there. All right, so that's a little rough. How about that? That's going to register. That's going to clear the thing. And then we need to say snippet listener.instance equals none, I guess. Yeah. That'll create the thing, and snippet settings listener.unregister will get rid of it. So we don't need that part anymore. Now, for our purposes here, I'm going to quit and restart because I just changed the state of the universe out from under that thing. Here we go. We can see it say my plugin loaded, and the settings have changed a couple of times, to be expected. So we go like so, and it's still doing what we expect it to do. So chef's kiss on that. So let's add some documentation comments in here. This class is a singleton that watches the global preferences to know when the settings are changing. Every time now that's going to be our single global instance. Our single instance. So our init here is going to be something like create our initial singleton instance and set up. And then lastly, we come down to here and say if there's currently a singleton instance of the class created, then this will remove its settings listener and get rid of that instance. And this, I think I'm not, oops, I don't think I'm doing that according to PEP8, right? Because I think we're supposed to put just one line between class methods and not two, as weird as that seems. So let's see. So we want a little something like that. Now we don't really need that part anymore. Listening, and here I can say like so. That'll do the bear. So now we're not going to see stuff in there. Really? Did we cork it? Because it was totally working before. All right, what have we done here? If snippet settings listener instance isn't none, leave. Otherwise, oh, I did that part incorrect. Pardon me. There we go. Yay, spelling. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Boop. Only happens once. Cool. All right. So, oh, sorry, we wanted that one instead. Our boilerplate is kind of set up here. Now, what we need to do is gather the list of ignored packages. So, so those are the list of packages that are currently ignored. And we want those to be a set. Oh, this isn't JavaScript. Who forgets how sets work in Python? Me. That doesn't help. Oh, it's lowercase, isn't it? Whoops. Too much JavaScript has messed with my noodle. All right. We want that to be a set so that we can figure out delta changes between them, essentially. Set up a singleton and load our settings. Okay. We probably want to say cached ignored, huh? I think that's how I did that previously. Yeah. A little something like that. And listen for changes in settings. So the next thing that we're going to need to do I see what I did there. Sets apparently can be compared with each other. So the new list of ignored packages is a set based on the current list of ignored packages as it exists in the settings file right now, right? And then we can say if new ignored is equal to the self.cached ignored, then return. We can say the list of ignored packages is unchanged, or the list of ignored packages has been altered. Oops. So, not changing, right? If I was to find the list of ignored packages, which is right here, let's say, for our purposes here, that well, maybe that console isn't quite so tall. Come on, guy. Like so. Say I added a package named A. It knows that the list of ignored packages have been altered. And once I save the file, it's going to keep saying that forever because I didn't give it the new list, right? But that allows us to be able to tell what's actually happening there. So one thing we're going to have to do here is whoops. Are now in the list that were not before added, and which packages used to be in the list but no longer are, which are the removed ones. And then and here we can say self.cached ignored is equal to new ignored to make sure that we actually catch that. So if we wanted the list of, let's say, removed first, for example, that would be the ignored files that are already ignored except for items that are now in the list. So anything that's not in the list that was there before is now removed, and added is kind of the inverse of that. That's the new ignored minus the self.cache ignored. Now, does this actually work with regular sets? I'm not entirely sure. And then we can say something like added is added and removed is removed. Like that. Clear that console. So nothing changed, nothing changed. We add a package named A. The package named A was added and nothing was removed. Now when I save, everything is the same as it was previously. When I remove the package named A, we know that A has been removed from the setting, but nothing has been added, and that's cool. Now if I add A and add B, we can say B and A are added, nothing was removed. If I change B to C, we should see nothing about A, we should see B being removed and C being added, which we do. So that is how we're going to track those things. Now for our purposes here, let's just go ahead and cut those particular items out. So we don't need those prints any longer. But this is the minimal amount of settings listener that's required to know when the ignored packages setting is changing and to know how it's changing. That something is being added, that something's being removed, and so on. So all we need to have now is a way to register with this people that care when this happens, so that we can invoke those out as calls. And then we're ready to plug this into our enhanced snippets package. And we just need to point this at, or we need to make our snippet manager use that to know when it should scan a particular package or remove snippets from a particular package. So we're doing pretty good here. If you just joined us in the stream, we're talking about Sublime Text plugin development, and in particular adding a settings listener, which allows you to know when user preferences are changing so that you can take some sort of action. There's a couple of potential pitfalls that people frequently fall into that we talked about here. If you have any questions about this or Sublime Text in general, or anything, feel free to throw those in the chat as you like. In the meantime, I apologize if I cough a little bit or sound a little bit stuffy, but as I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, this stream was supposed to happen last Monday, but I was a little sick and couldn't really make it, and even now I'm not at 100%, but I can't stay away that long. I enjoy streaming far too much. That is just the driver for stuff that we don't necessarily care about. So anything we do here is going to have to be a class method. On our little instance item here. So unregister is not a good name here. Let's call this shutdown instead, so that we can make a class method named and I will call this callback, let's say. And we're going to need a couple of these. Nope. I think this means I'm officially famous. All right. We're going to need one of those. We're going to call this something like... do we actually even care about that? What are the keys that we actually care about here? In no instance will we ever... Yeah. Yeah, let's just do this. And here, are changed. Have been added and, oh, sorry, the set of packages that have been added and the set of packages that have been removed. It's pretty much all we require for that, yeah. So we're going to need a listeners list here. Are we going to end ourselves up with some sort of weird circuitous loop here? I hope not. I don't think so. We're going to be able to kill this no matter what. We made this sort of we could theoretically watch any setting we want here, although for our purposes right now, the only setting we actually care about watching is the ignored packages. There's probably some other settings that we actually want to watch. So when that happens, we're going to change this to be an object. And add-on listener will tell you what setting it cares about so that it can trigger those out. But for right now, we don't necessarily care. Oh, sorry. This is going to be self.listeners.append callback. And then here, we need to say for callback in self.listeners, we can invoke said callback. And our contract says that what we're going to pass it is the added items and the removed items, right? So that will create the instance. Here we could actually add ourselves a listener with add listener, and we're going to give it a lambda added removed. That is a print of added and removed, like that. Okay, so if we do that and we do it correctly, because I renamed that value, this would actually be snippet settings listener dot instance dot listeners. Pardon me, because that's a class method. Everything else will just follow from that as we desire. So that means that if I modify this to add a, we should see two messages. Oh, whoops. What did we do? Oh, whoops. Hang on. There we go. We're going to clear that console. So again, if we add A, that's telling us A was added and B was removed. This is the callback that we registered saying A was added and nothing was removed. If we add in B, we see a similar message with a B. B was added, nothing was removed. B added, nothing removed. And if we change B for C, then B was removed and C was added. So added C, removed B, added C, removed B. So that call totes works. And that is realistically as simplistic as this needs to be for our purposes in our little plugin here. Now we can tie this into the SnippetManager to be able to do what we want. That's not too shabby. Why are there 3 of those? Wacky. All right. I should also point out that if you're used to music in the streams, I should have, if I did it correctly, disabled that so that you guys can't hear it, because Pretzel Rocks consistently has issues where even though I'm registered, it dings me for portions of songs that it recognizes. And I'm tired of that. I don't want to jeopardize my channel, so we're not going to do anything with that. Okay, so I'm going to put this in the core. Something is going to have to happen in the core, because we're going to need to call loaded and unloaded. That's probably not a thing we actually need either, but we'll worry about that later. Poop. What do you think of that? I'm an adult just like everybody else, theoretically speaking. Happy Halloween, sir. I should point out, we have a pretty sweet picture of Walter dressed as a devil. If you're nice, Mary Sue will share it with you. Or she probably already did. Is there not? There's not actually a fart emote? We are all adults here. Yes, we are. All right. Core could load stuff from lib, right? Why can't it? Oh, that's right. You're friends with her. I forgot. All right, then. I wasn't lying when I said that someone actually offered him an apple and he wasn't too pleased about it. Not enough steak there. Also, curse you and your chalupas. I'm technically your friend as far as Facebook is concerned. I think. Unless you unfriended me and I didn't notice. That would be like me. I don't interact with Facebook a lot. Okay, let's say we actually want a new file in... Well, huh. We're going to take you and go boom. But we're not going to put you in there because you're not going to do anything exciting. And we need you. But we don't need you. Yeah, I bet it was. I'm still riding high off my Chakupa. Although it only worked one of the 2 times. The first time I went in there, I put down the coupon and the lady said, "Oh, we don't have any chicken. Is steak okay?" And I said, "You bet your bippity steak is okay." The second time I went in there, I put down the coupon and the lady turned around and said, "Do we have chicken?" And they said no. And she said, "We don't have chicken. Is beef okay?" And I said, "Nah, I guess." prefer steak, but you know, I get that first lady didn't know what she was doing. Ha 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 ha. So a winner is me as far as that's concerned. And those I did get a chili cheese burrito that second time around to go with my 5 pounds of popcorn chicken. No more streaming. Are you giving up streaming for starting tomorrow? I missed that announcement somewhere, if that is the case. For anybody that's watching this right now, this is Red Jar of Jam. He's on Twitch and he's super awesome. I highly recommend following him. Red Jar O Jam. He's jam-tastic. And I'm telling you that as a person that doesn't actually like jam. I prefer marmalade myself. No stream November. Ah. Yeah, see, he's also very shy. He doesn't want anybody to know how cool he is. But keep it on the DL. Give him a follow if you're on Twitch. Okay. Now, I guess we kind of need to add more crap here, huh? That should reload settings listener and from dot settings listener import that thing whose name I forget. You. And then I'm going to add a comma to that one so I don't bone that up. Is your profile picture a picture of you? A barf after all that much Taco Bell is probably not that cool a thing. Are you wearing your costume right now? See, I'm wearing this is as close as I get to a Halloween costume. I'm dressed as a disgruntled computer nerd that had to sit in what was essentially a 3-hour meeting. I'll do the best I can, sir. Thank you. Now, if that was there, and theoretically that was there, I guess what we probably want to do is rename that to that, so it unloads. And we'll quit. We'll fire that up. Let's add a couple of debugs in here just so we know we're doing stuff. A little bit of that. Here we say shutting down the settings listener. That one doesn't matter. And here we can say print a setting has done a thing in a place for reasons like that. So we'll know if any of that is actually happening. That's the thing we need to load from lib. So that's not lib. Help, I forget how my package works. Oh, 2 dots. Sorry. you. And before we do anything else, let's say snippet settings listener, and our unloaded is snippet settings listener dot shutdown. So when we save this file and the plugin reloads, we can see it saying it's setting up the settings listener, which is what we want it to say. And every time I do that, there's it shutting down, and there it is setting up. All right, so that part works. Now, from over here, we say from dot settings listener import that. Hey, Cyberlenka. Good morning. Well, it's 9 o'clock at night for me, but you know. What is the good word? What's the haps? I may or may not have accidentally made something work the first try, which is kind of impressive, based on the fact that I've been rehearsing this in my head for the last few days, but I never really took a deep dive into example code until just now. We're going to want to do something here, aren't we? I think we're going to want to say hello, Ashwin. Welcome, welcome. I can't remember what I named that. Well, that is definitely correct. Really boned that one up. Added, removed, right? Something like that. What's the good word, everybody? We're going to say something like says, managers say change be happening, yay. And then we'll print added and removed. Yeah, nice, isn't it? As a matter of fact, I'm not actually even using that version right now. That caught me by surprise. He is indeed. I have a question regarding that, by the way, Ashwin. Under what circumstances is it supposed to offer to format my file? Because it wasn't helping me with that, and I don't know why. Oh, I've decided to flout convention on that, huh? Boss, allow me to fix this other thing then. Because I'm nothing if not consistent. There we go. You're a fan of Prisma as well, I take it, Cyberlenka. We're using that on my Twitch project right now, if you were unaware of that. Okay. Oh no, it's too long. We're making a version of Stream Elements that's low-key for people that want to use the wacky stuff that I created on my Twitch streams for their own streams on Twitch or elsewhere, although I only integrate directly with Twitch right now and not with YouTube. But that could potentially change if YouTube gets cooler. Fun. I was actually trying to get it to reformat my file the other day when I was changing up the schema a little bit because we stopped using Postgres and started using MongoDB for the project, but the option was grayed out and I couldn't figure out why. Other parts of it clearly work because if I type something funky in there, it gets all cranky. I don't remember making a setting like that. I was trying to manually invoke it, but it was grayed out. I never really investigated it too deeply. For all I know, the server crashed or something. Is that going to do all we want here? I think that might do all we want here. Ooh, boy, I broke that real good. All right, so what are we cheesed about here? Oh, shnikey. Oh, I did not save that file. Whoops. How about that? We happy about that now? All right. Let's see. Package named A added. Ignored packages updated to. Whoop. Oh, check at that. I totally did a thing like this in HyperHelp too. A setting has done a thing in a place for reasons, although it doesn't actually display the actual information one would enjoy from such a case. What did I do wrong there? Oh, so that is not actually being called. Uh-oh. Yeah. Don't undersell your action on that, sir. If that said we were trying to add a listener, and this said that, shutting down the settings listener, trying to add a listener, setting up the settings listener. Did this actually get invoked? Sorry. Yeah. Okay, trying to add a listener. There is no instance yet, fool. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. Well, that's a real kick in the yams. Yeah, that would definitely be kind of neat. There's probably something in Sublime lib that does something with it, but I tend to eschew that because I don't tend to like dependencies if I can help it. They make it harder for people to install things manually. Also, I'm a dinosaur. So technically everything works okay, except that the one thing happens before the other, which I wouldn't have thought was technically possible. Because when this is loaded, it should invoke core loaded. Oh, the imports happen in the wrong order. Oh, good grief. Here. Let's quit that and restart it and see what happens there. Maybe we'll get lucky. We could have gotten ourselves into a weird sideways state because we did it while things were actively there and I made several changes. Setting up the settings listener doesn't necessarily say that it did anything though, does it? I actually mean to put that on a t-shirt. We say it a lot. I was actually, last week I had off, I was actually planning on working on an animation of a little dinosaur that I could make run across the bottom of the screen. But then I ended up having to work several afternoons because I'm the only one that knows how firewalls work, apparently. So that didn't work for us. Because I would imagine that removing this isn't going to help, yeah? Yeah. The problem, such as it is that we have created our plugin files that contain the classes that we need such that they create their own instances when they load, which is probably not kosher, and probably something in plugin loaded should actually be responsible for triggering these things in the order we expect them to be in. So the listener has to happen first, and then everything that depends on the listener second. Hey, vacation chore day. Been there. Thanks for stopping by. Have fun with those chores, if such is technically possible. All right, so, whoops, we don't want that, pardon me. So our problem here is that this particular file, when it is loaded, invokes this to create this instance. When this instance is created, its init method tries to set up the listener. But it can't set up the listener because that happens while this file is loaded, but the other one hasn't actually had anything happen with it yet. So I know how to fix that, but I don't like it. If these lines weren't here, and they were over here instead, for example, we do that. Now this is responsible for doing that, and if we're going to do that for that thing, then we also need to do it for this as well. Because what's good for one thing being broken is good for all the things being broken. Yeah? And we paste in that. So we get the snippet manager, the enhancement manager, and the snippet settings listener out of lib. This is the thing that actually has to export those values. If we do that, then That and that need to be that. And then that needs to be that. So we still load those files, but we export the symbols instead of the actual objects that they represent. That one was just always done correctly. Now when we quit this and restart it, we find various things are exploded in our face, I would imagine. Because that's not actually where these things come from. Yeah. That's going to be a terrible, terrible run-in here. We would have to do something like that if we wanted that in here. Because that's going to need those classes. Heaven help us. If we're going to do that, then the snippet manager needs to be given the enhancements. Yeah? Okay, here's the theory. This thinks it needs enhancements from the enhancement manager. Like so. But we can't actually have that. This is the only place it's used. There, there, and there. So whoops. That's the thing we care about. We do that. Then this isn't here at all. Then we put that there. And when we create the snippet manager, we need to pass it enhancements. Like that. And I think the snippet manager needs to be well, we're treating all of these classes like singletons, but we need the snippet manager to also be a singleton so that the things that want to invoke it don't need to have that value in this particular iteration of this design. But now we're unhappy in the events. The events want the snippet manager. All right. So Whoops. What was I doing over here? We're going to do that. And then we're going to say self dot instant. Sorry. Snippet manager dot instance is equal to self. Let's say for the snippet manager. So we don't actually need to do that. And that thing that it thought it needed, which is in the events file, that's going to be snippet manager. Oops. And this needs to snag that. So that would be something like that. If this works, we clearly need to tweak this up a little bit, but you know, that would be enough to get us going anyway. What else is unhappy? Oh, whoops. Let's do that. Try that again. Can import name manager from commands. Okay. All right. So what commands are doing something with that? This one, I guess. Realistically, a nicer way to do that would be to make all of those methods static. Then we don't need to do this weird game. And we are unhappy in the what? Oh, whoops. I guess we need to do the same thing to this one as we did to that one. You and you. But for the enhancement manager, no init, huh? That seems like it's probably safe. Why not even God himself could cause this code to fail now? Except for the part where I did the same thing twice. But apart from that, all good. Well, herd burglar. All right, that is also a potential problem. Because now we're depending on it actually being created in a way that makes sense, but this code is the opposite of that. Realistically, that particular code should happen only on init, or plugin load, I should say. Instead of at load time, which is entirely possible. What would be a nice way to pull that off? We could actually short that kind of nicer, but once we do that, the package should load, but it won't actually do anything. The good news is that part worked. So now we can get this part going. A was added, nothing was removed. B was added, nothing was removed. And if I do this, B was removed, C was added. Which is what we want to have happen there. So now our only problem is that we have to remember that, and in the core, we probably want to do that. Here. Then we don't actually need that. Those are things we require. And then we just need to import that symbol. Well, not that one. Core is in source, and this is in source enhancements. So from dot enhancements import you. All right, according to me, that's totally going to do something. You're going to be surprised at how much this does. We're going to see that this thing actually loaded the plugin appropriately. It said it was setting up the settings listener. It tried to add a listener. A listener was actually added. So that's nice. For our last trick here, we find the SnippetManager. Because one of the things that we have in here that we care about is scanning snippets. So that's a scan for everything. That's for scanning a package. So if we just want to check what we're doing here, scan all packages. Whoops. Scan package name, and we're also going to want one of those in come on, you're in here somewhere, guy. Here. Oh, we already have one. Discarding all snippets in package. So we want that to be in place. For package in added, self dot scan package, and for package in removed, maybe we do that part first. Self dot discard package, which was the point of this entire job, to be able to throw away snippets in packages that are unloaded and include them in packages that are loaded. So again, we'll do that just to make sure. Setting up a listener, trying to add a listener was added, it's scanning all packages, and we are good to go. So now, let's say we add a package named A. It says it's scanning A, which causes it to discard all of the snippets that are in that package before it tries to do something with. If we save again, nothing happens, right? Now we're going to add a package named B. And we're going to see that it added B, discarded nothing, so it's scanning B, but as a part of any scan for any package is throwing away the snippets that it already has so that it can find new ones. So that's doing what we expect. And if we change B to C, then we can see we added C and removed B. So it's discarding all of the snippets in B because it no longer needs them, and then it's scanning for snippets in C, which causes it to discard them. So that really seems like everything we wanted to have happen is happening. And if we invoke the snippet like that, we're getting a funny format. Oh, that's right. Yeah, because we I forgot. Year, month, day. Year, month, day. It's Halloween. Snippet Snippet still works. We can still insert the date. We can still select some text, copy it to the clipboard, and when we expand the snippet, get the text of the clipboard in there instead of the default, plus the date in whatever format that we like. That part's working, but also we've set it up so that it can discard and load snippets from package based on whether they're added or removed. So now everything is fully dynamic here. Instead of constantly having to reload all snippets all the time, it can know someone just installed that package. Let's give it a little scan to see if there's anything we care about the contents in there. Or that package for latex has been ignored, so let's just take all of the snippets for it and kick them out because we no longer want to execute them. Remember that the way that this thing is working, we're storing some of the information about snippets in memory so that we can add them to that auto completion panel in a way that is completely seamless to how snippets normally arrive there. Normally, Sublime automatically hides snippets that are unloaded, but because we're holding them in memory, we need to make that a special case for ourselves. And that is an hour and 44 minutes and 9 sneezes worth of creating a settings change listener. The first part of that was a lot smoother than the later part, where we accidentally realized that some of the stuff in the design doesn't necessarily do what we want it to do. And with that, I bid you a fun to do on this stream. We should be back next week. I'm going to go and record, if I can. I cannibalized some of my recording setup so as to help my wife set up her new office. But we're going to be here next week cleaning up this code a little bit, because obviously, as we've seen here, some of the design decisions that were initially made, now that we have more interactions with things that need to happen in a more deliberate fashion, are things that need to be cleaned up just a little bit. And we're going to do that in next week's stream. So hope to see you there. We're going to also be streaming on Twitch on Wednesday and Friday, where we work on JavaScript, but still coding stream, much like this. We're going to be using the Prisma database and MongoDB. I'm actually using a friend's test library to write some some non-interactive tests for the stuff that we're doing, so that every time I make a change to the database handling, we can verify that everything is going to fall out the way that we expect it to. So that ought to be exciting. Hope to see you there. Hope to see you in the next stream. Until then, I hope you have a sublime week. And since it's Halloween out there, somebody eat a chocolate bar for me, preferably a coffee crisp, but I'll take what I can get at this point. Night, everybody.